I am not usually one to give into hyperbole, but this is a game changer. I am, of course, talking about the new Ruination Chamber, just been released into Age of Sigmar through Scaventide, whose rules are now with us in Warcry. Souls irreparably damaged by Bone Daddy Nagash himself, and too many reforgings by dying over and over again on the battlefield. These ancient automatons are here to fight back against the Skaven menace. Today, I'm going to be taking you through the new Ruination Chamber. I'm going to be talking about the fighters themselves, what makes them tick, and we are going to be doing some list building for them. Okay, let's get into it. As always, we're going to start with the reaction, and it is Ancient Aura. This is amazing. It is a fantastic reaction. We're going to see that the reason why I'm so excited about these guys is that they are able to combine the really good profiles with Stormcast with actual cheap chaff that you'd be able to bring. Those cheap chaff can use Ancient Aura, which means that you basically have warband-wide ability negation. This is something that you basically don't see anywhere else. I think it's very strong. When you think about some of the best abilities in the game, things like Rampage, for example, yes, it's true, you want higher and higher dice on your Rampage, but even if you get something like a quad 2, you can use this reaction, roll your dice, and as long as you roll a 2 or more, that's it. The quad is wasted, and your opponent is basically having a hard time. So yeah, I think Ancient Aura is awesome. What this allows you to do is go the more control route and stop your opponent from doing things as opposed to you getting extra actions. So that's why I'm very impressed with it, and I think it could be very good. On top of that, you get access to the Stormcast Eternal's battle trait, Scions of the Storm. So on the one hand, we've got a reaction that, if they are close to things, allows the Stormcast to turn off abilities. And on the other hand, we have a battle trait where if you're playing pure Stormcast, you get to teleport a guy relatively close to your opponent. So I think the combination of the two is very strong. It basically shunts you across the battlefield into a move attack range in one turn, which is why, yeah, I think this is a very strong argument for just bringing pure Stormcast. You can basically bring your Ruination Chamber core, and you can ally in any Stormcast hero, and you do not lose this battle trait. You're going to see from the rest of the warband where I think this is going to be a real contender when it comes to actual competitive play. Memorian Tokens. The question is, how do you get them? One is through the double Memories of Past Glories. This is available to the Reclusians themselves. It's an easy way to get Memorian Token. It's basically better than Rush because it does two things for the price of one. And once you have that Memorian Token, you can use that for your reaction to essentially turn off abilities even easier. The second way to get Memorian Tokens is through the triple Earn an Honorable Death. This one is available through the Lord Terminos, so it's battlefield-wide, as long as you're visible, and as long as you've got guys who have taken 5 or more damage points, they get to make free attack actions. So that's a nice little bit of action economy built into this. I think that this is a very compelling argument, again, to use the Lord Terminos and to use the Reclusians themselves, because it really does help push the control aspect that you get via Ancient Aura and your Memorians. Let's go on to the fighters. First up, I've got the Lord Vigilant on Gryphstalker. This is the big hero in the box, 280 points. It's very comparable to those other mounted Stormcast fighters. You get the double Lightning Scoured Soul. This double is available to basically everyone within the Ruination Chamber. And I find it interesting. Again, Games Workshop are introducing different kinds of abilities with different kinds of mechanics into the game. So for one thing, you've got the Memorian tokens. You place the tokens, you use the tokens up. And the second one is the idea of using Ruination dice. It will last a turn even after you finish activating. And each time that this fighter is allocated a damage point, you get to roll one of the Ruination dice, and a roll of 3 or more, the damage point is not allocated to this fighter. So if you roll a double 6, and you use Lightning Scoured Soul, you get 6 dice. The 6 dice, you're going to roll 3 or more when you take damage, and each one can negate. So at the very best, on average, this thing is going to be negating 4 points of damage. Now, that 4 points of damage on, say, 20 wound Reclusian, for example, could basically be the difference between you living and dying an extra turn. We're going to see later on that we've got Gryphchargers. They only have 6 wounds, so being able to use Lightning Scoured Soul to stretch them out to almost but not really a 10 wound fighter, I think it's really interesting having this passive effect that's turned on for the rest of the battle round that you get to use even if you get your Ruination Chamber fighters into a place where they basically would normally take a whole bunch of damage and die. That's basically almost one attack off of Vexmore. So yeah, I think it it could be good. I think it's situationally good. What else does the Lord Vigilant have? He's got Delivered Judgment. It's the big quad of the warband. You can't pick a fighter with a hero remark, so unfortunately you can't pick things like your Lord Terminos or other one of those heroes. If we're looking at this ability and we're trying to think, okay, is it better than Rampage? The Lord Vigilant himself, his stat line is okay, so getting that extra attack off of Rampage isn't necessarily better than just activating a guy again. It does require you to babysit him with another guy so you can use the quad, but we're going to see that your Ruination Chamber fighters are actually pretty good. So I think potentially this is a very strong quad to use. The Lord Terminos, that's a good damage profile. I like that. What we're doing is we are knocking on Annihilator with Grand Hammer stats here. There's basically only 1 point of strength in it between the two, but the Lord Terminos gets 4 attacks, which I think is really good for the points cost that you're paying. Of course, he gets access to Lightning Scout and Soul. He also gets access to that triple that we've already talked about, Earn an Honorable Death. I think just as a generic fighter, this guy's pretty good. What it does mean is that you won't necessarily have to bring in things like your Annihilator Prime into this warband because you have that kind of damage built in. Now, of course, the Annihilator Prime, it's got the ability where if it kills a guy, it gets to either make a move or an attack action. But the Terminos itself, I think, has a lot going for it for the points that you're paying. Then we have the Knight Azyros. The Knight Azyros, if we remember, is the guy with the wings and guy with the lantern. Way more expensive. That's basically because it's got movement 10 and fly. Damage profile is average. It's not that good, really. But there's something I want to show you. Toughness 5, 28 wounds. Okay, that makes him stick around a bit. But his ability, Blazing Lantern, you get to run into your opponent's biggest, smashiest thing. Pop your triple, which they have no way of countering, and then they're basically hitting you for normal hits. That's combined with his toughness 5 and 28 wounds, I think makes this guy really strong at flying into deployment groups, swinging at some guys, maybe taking a couple of guys down, and then soaking all of the return damage, but locking down that deployment group for at least a turn. I'd probably give him strength 5, because that would allow him to wound on 3s, allow him to get a little bit more damage in a bit more easily. Or if you really wanted to play the lockdown role, you can give him +4 wounds. Make him 32 wounds of toughness 5, only be hits. I think that's potentially strong. I would look at the Knight Azyros seriously as a contender for one of your heroes. Right, I said that this was a game changer, and the Gryphcharger is the reason. Why is it the reason? Because you look at it, it is a 60-point chaff unit in a Stormcast warband. Wow. You can finally put together Stormcast warbands basically bigger than 6. You can even make 8-man warbands out of the Reclusians if you really wanted to, with an ally in there. So the Gryphcharger is the secret sauce. The good thing about the Gryphcharger is that it's got access to the Reclusian reaction, and it's got access to Lightning Scoured Soul, meaning not only has it got the ability to stick around a little bit longer, but it also has the ability to turn off enemy actions if they are close enough with its reaction. So really good. Gryphcharger, amazing. 2 or 3 easily in every warband. The Lord Veritant damage profile isn't bad from his Wizard Bolt. You can buff that to strength 5 and suddenly it's cracking heads. It comes with the Sense Unholy Sorcery triple. If there is a friendly Gryphcharger within 6 inches, the ability is battlefield wide. What does this mean? If you use Sense Unholy Sorcery and you have a fighter near an enemy fighter who wants to use an ability, you automatically turn off that ability with a reaction because you're rolling a 1 or more to turn it off. The value of the ability becomes 1. Crazy. I think it's really good. I don't know how much more you would necessarily need to turn off enemy actions, especially when you just have a bunch of reacting Gryphchargers anyway. But if you really wanted to lock down your opponent's abilities and just force them to go through the route of, okay, these are my stats, the Lord Veritant is what you want and is where you want to be. Proscecutors managed to get into the Ruination Chamber. These, of course, were in the new Scaventide box, so they managed to get in here. What have you got? You got the Prosecutor and the Prosecutor Prime. We're going to see exactly how Games Workshop managed to keep them cheap. And the reason is your Prosecutors only have 15 wounds and toughness 4. But the upside of that is that you get relatively cheap flying fighters, right? I think you'll be using these guys a lot like the Knight Azyros that we already talked about. So getting in there, holding up enemy deployment zones, but they don't have nearly the same amount of longevity than the Knight Azyros does. So you're going to have to watch out, and you're really going to have to pick your fights with these guys. They also have a really good double through Darkened Skies. They got a teleport. Wow. It is, I think, joint for the fastest teleporter in the game. The Dribblade Harrow has a profile that's suspiciously the same as the Prosecutor Prime. So it basically 30 points cheaper than that. Sure, it doesn't come with a Resurrect, but you can use the Prosecutor Prime in the exact same way as we're using our Dribblade Harrow, and it'll do well in that situation. Finally, my favorites, the Reclusians themselves. Basic Reclusians, 160 points, awesome. Lightning Scoured Soul, so they get the Ruination dice to be able to protect themselves. Memories of Past Glories, so it's basically Rush on steroids. I think it's fantastic. We are again knocking on Annihilator status with these guys. Yes, they're more expensive than Annihilators, okay, but they got +1 move out of that. They got an extra attack than Annihilators. You can put more points into these guys, make them 175. That is a really scary damage profile to have to fight, especially at toughness 6 with the 20 wounds. It's something your opponent just won't want to run into. They can turn off enemy abilities if they have to with their reaction. They can save themselves with more dice with Lightning Scoured Soul. I really like Reclusians, and I'd be looking to play maybe 2 of them in my warbands, possibly 3. These guys are scary. You don't want to be running into them, and they get 2 attacks on you because they will flatten you. When we're talking about allies, because they also fulfill the requirements for the battle trait, you can bring any of the Stormcast Eternal allies, any of the normal ones that you would normally bring, and you still get to do the teleport, which is really good. So if you were thinking about taking a Reclusian Prime, I'd probably be tempted to take the Annihilator Prime over that, simply because it's got the shock and awe double, so when it kills a guy, it gets to either make a move or make an attack. If you're playing pure Stormcast Eternals, you can choose your Annihilator Prime to be the guy that you get to teleport around. Personally, I'd of course be looking at Calthea. It doesn't break any of your abilities. She gets to move guys around. She gets to do bonus attack actions. She basically has everything that you need out of a support hero. Some other options that not necessarily within are things like the Codewrite. The Codewrite is a very good option in smaller warbands because it does have that double that basically turns off all your opponent abilities. So if you really wanted to lean into the I'm gonna mess around with your abilities play, I think the Codewrite might be good for you. The Rune Lord is also a very good choice. It has the Dispossessed double over my dead body, so it can sit on an objective, basically count as 3 guys. And it's got the reaction whereby if it dies, it gets to give friendly fighters bonus actions. So just as a generic decent ally, I think either the Rune Lord or the Codewrite, mostly I'm going to be looking at Calthea. I've noticed 58% of you guys are not subscribed. So here's my call for you. If you like what you see and you want to see more videos, please don't forget to subscribe. It costs you absolutely nothing, and it helps me out a ton by helping me get noticed more on YouTube and helping me get my videos out to more people. And also, if you want to give me some more support and you want to throw that my way, you can join me over here on YouTube as a member. You can join me over on Patreon, and you can join me over on Streamlabs. Either way, you're going to get to see behind the scenes content. You're going to get to see stuff before it even comes out on YouTube, and you're going to have a little bit of a say into the kind of content I'm creating going forward. Some list ideas that I've been messing around with. I think the biggest strength of this warband is the 60-point chaff that you can bring along with your Stormcast profiles to bring proper 7 or 8-man lists, especially in this new version of Warcry that we're playing that seems to feature slightly smaller lists. I think bringing that proper punch on the table along with the ability to field a lot of chaff is very valuable and it's very powerful. Again, remember, pure Stormcast Eternal lists get the battle trait, which is really good, so they do get the teleport. I think just because you have 60-point chaff, there are a lot of different options for you to be able to pursue, but for the most part, I think what we're going to be looking at is 1 Ruination hero, an ally, a couple of Reclusians, and a bunch of dogs. And that's really the template that most competitive lists, I think, is going to be following. Alternatively, if you didn't want to take Reclusians and you just wanted to take a really big order Stormcast list, you could just bring Gryphchargers for 60 points, use them as reaction batteries, really messing up your opponent's plays, messing up your opponent's abilities, and just ally in. You could put an Achillean King in there. You have your local Ruination Chamber hero who can be very good in combat or turn off abilities or do whatever, and you just play this kind of weird order good stuff list with a lot of ability disruption built in. That's also a route that you can take, and that's also one that I think could be very compelling for this warband. Either way, if you're going to bring Reclusians, I'd always look to bring Strength 5. I don't think Strength 4 is good enough nowadays, but sitting at Strength 5, you can really use that 3-5 damage profile, and it works. I've got a couple of lists here for you. The first up is a Lord Veritant. Veritant has the triple that allows it to make all abilities count as values of 1. That ability is board wide if there are Gryphchargers near him. We're going to be bringing Calthea Zandire, a pair of Reclusians with a +1 Strength Blessing, and 4 Gryphchargers. 8-man warband, got a lot of punch from the Reclusians, got a lot of bonus activations from Calthea, ability messing around with the Veritant and Gryphchargers. I think that could be pretty good. Alternatively, I've been looking at the Knight Azyros for 255 points. Again, bringing Calthea as an ally because her free move basically gives the Knight Azyros a bonus 10-inch move, which is really good. Take the Annihilator Prime, and then you can take 4 to 5 Gryphchargers plus blessings for everybody else. That's more of a order good stuff soup list. Again, I think it's got the ability to do pretty well. If you've got Calthea moving the Lord Azyros, the Annihilator Prime does the whole teleport thing, who can then be moved by Calthea to get into combat. There's a lot of play there. And it's, again, a 7 to 8-man warband. So that's the kind of things that you can do. But again, I really think that we're going to be seeing one in-house character, one ally, a couple of Reclusians, bunch of crows. I think that's a template that we're going to see going forward. All right, and that's it from me for today. Thank you very much for watching. Personally, I think that the Ruination Chamber offer a lot to Stormcast Eternal players. I really like them. I think they have the ability to put forward proper competitive lists, especially in today's format with how people are playing and what people are bringing. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know down in the comment section below what you think about the new Ruination Chamber. If you've got any interesting builds for them, that's something I'd like to hear. If you've got any interesting allies that you think could be really good with them, again, I'd like to hear that. Put that down in the comment section below, and we will have a good talk. But yes, that's it from me for today. Thank you very much for watching. As always, I've been Itan. This has been Off Myth Musings, and we will see you next time.